This is one of those things that I have slides, and I'm going to try my best to stay to them, and I'm going to try my best to do what I'm supposed to do, but I'm not very good at that, okay? If you have a burning question, or if I say something and you're like, what is she talking about? You may have to wave, because I don't know that I can see you or screen, and that's okay, all right? I don't know how many of you, some of you are here and you've already got people in R.I.S E, and that's cool. I'm glad you like me. But this is really designed for people who don't know what R.I.S E is. And people are saying, I've heard R.I.S E, what in the world is R.I.S E, and why do we need R.I.S E? And so we scheduled this really for you guys to give you an opportunity for me to just give you kind of a really little bitty dip in the pool, okay? Now, I'm not going to go very deep because I don't have time. If you have schools in R.I.S E Academy, you will go to a R.I.S E Academy for administrators. If you're an administrator, we have that set up for you, just for you, to make this thing better for you, all right? The whole point of R.I.S E Academy is to narrow the gap. Did you know that there was a gap between what we know about teaching reading and classroom practice? Did you know there was a gap? Yeah, me too. We started this struggle about a year and a half ago. We started reading all the research. And when we got back to the office, we were all like, oh my gosh, how many kids have we warped? How many kids have we done? We were doing the best we knew how to do at the time, but now we know better. And so because we know better, we're going to have to do better. That's our goal. And so R.I.S E Academy, that's our purpose, is to pull everybody together into a huge PLC. This is, if all of us, if 1,500 of us are in a PLC, and we're all reading research, and we're all sharing research, and we're all excited about research, guess what's going to happen to our practice? It's going to get better. It's going to get better. So I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that I'm the expert in reading. I am a student just like you guys, and I read Kilpatrick's book about a year and a half or 2 years ago, and so I'm a wee babe, okay? But I love to read about it. I read about it all the time, and I hear people go to conferences. Just last week, some people went to Plain Talk. The week before that, they went to a brain research one, and I called them, and I'm like, hey, do we need to change anything about R.I.S.E? Do we have anything about R.I.S E that's not right? And they're like, no, it's good. We have just what we need. Okay, so I feel comfortable that what we have is based on science. But if you go to something and you see a new piece of information I need, please send it to me, because we always want it to be the most cutting edge research we can find. I don't know if I'm going to work this. All right, this is how we started the conversation. Why do we need R.I.S E Academy? Let's look at our scores. Commissioner Key said scores were not the goal, and they're not. The goal is to get our kids to read, but scores always make governors change initiatives. Don't you know that works that way? The legislative body says we can't read, we're having trouble, and that's kind of what happened. Look at our scores. In 4th grade, in the last NAEP, only 31% were proficient. Let that sink in for a minute. How many kids are not proficient if 31% are? I mean, that's 70% of our kids. Okay, we can't have that. Now, that was on NAEP. That's certainly not the only measure. But if you're honest about, even back at benchmark, we manipulate those scores, right? Our scores weren't good even then, all right? If you look at something else, 8th grade NAEP, last time they took it, it even goes down further. It's at 27%, okay? We can't have that in Arkansas. We've got to have better. We don't even want 20% who fail. Right now, we've got 20% who are passing. All right, look at this one. This is on ACT Aspire. Now, we have updated the numbers. This was from 2015. We had 49% in 3rd through 10th grade who met the English Language Arts proficiency benchmark. I can't speak. We have updated. From 2016, the number's up to 52.6. Okay, it's going up, which is a positive, but that's still half of our kids. Half of our kids. Think about what that looks like in your classroom. If half of your kids can't score in a proficient level on a reading test, what does that mean for us as a society? I'm starting to get old. I'm starting to think these people are going to be paying in Social Security so I can retire, right? They're going to not have very good jobs if they can't read. All right, the next one. Of graduating seniors in 2015, only 39% met the reading readiness benchmarks. I have updated scores. From 2016, this number actually dropped to 35%. There's a couple reasons for that. We started giving the test to every single kid. That was part of it. But less than 40% of our graduating seniors, okay? So for me, I was a kindergarten teacher, and I always look at things from a kindergarten teacher's point of view because that was my role as a teacher. As a kindergarten teacher, yeah, ACT is important because I have kids in college, but for me, it's how many of my kids need a remediation, okay? So I want you to think about that. I'm going to need some help, and y'all aren't sitting close enough for me to point to you. So I'm going to trust that 25 of you are going to come up here. Y'all come up and join me for some fun. Come on. All you have to do is stand here. Come on, y'all can do it. All right, I got one up. Come on down. Just come on up to the stage. You're really you're an object lesson, okay? You need 25. I knew my friends would come up here. Thank you, friends. 25. Y'all are so good. If we have more than 25, that's cool. Y'all sit in the front. I need a few more in a minute. Let me count off and see how many we have. All right, here we go. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I just need 5 more. All right, there's 2 more. I love it. 3, 4, 5. Okay, I picked 25 because this is a typical classroom size, not in kindergarten, but in first grade, second grade, third grade. It's a typical, okay? Come on up. Now, this is 25. It is a heavy female population of a classroom. You're going to have a lot of drama, all right? Okay, here's what I'm going to show you. If this is my classroom, AET, am I driving y'all crazy walking all over this stage? Y'all okay? Okay. If this is my typical classroom and as many people in my classroom can read as ACT Aspire, okay, if that's true, then I'm going to count off. Watch this. You step that way a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those are the kids that can read. Look what's left. Now, I'm a first grade teacher, and I'm going to do reading groups, and I have 17 kids who can't read. Been there? Y'all lived there? I've lived there before. It's real. Now, I want you to look at the numbers because these numbers represent proficiency based on reason of not proficiency. Does that make sense? So out of these 17, 70% of them are going to struggle with both decoding and comprehension, with both. So that's going to be 12 of you. All right, so I'm going to start here. I'm going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Will y'all slide that way just slightly? Now, all of those people, they struggle with decoding and comprehension. Okay, that's kind of a big small group, isn't it? Okay, here we go, small group. 12 of those 25 kids can't decode or comprehend. Now, that's an issue. We'll deal with that in a minute. Look back at the screen. 20% of my 70% of bad readers are going to be poor decoders and good comprehenders. Think about that for a minute. So that's 1, 2, 3. I think my numbers are weird.
We have one extra.
Do we have an extra person?
I think so.
Okay. I want you to go to the 12 group. We're just going to make them bigger. Okay? All right. Now, if you can't decode, how in the world would you comprehend? What kids are these? You know what these kids are? These are your kids that are labeled as dyslexic. Because they can't decode worth a flip. But you know what? They've got huge oral comprehension. They can figure it out till the text gets super hard, and then they start falling down too. All right, so we got 12 or 13 in that group. We got 3 in this group. 10% of our kids that struggle, so these 2, are good decoders, but they can't comprehend. All right, think about this practically. I'm a first grade teacher. This is my class. I got these kids to remediate, and these kids to remediate, and these kids to remediate, and I can't leave these out to dry. They deserve a year's growth too. So, okay, what am I going to do? Let me tell you what we typically do. I know this because I did it for a really long time. I tested them all with the DRA. That's what I did. And I put them in wads based on sort of their score. So let's say I had 4 kids that were level, I taught kindergarten, so level A, okay? Yes, no, 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 A. Then I had 5 kids at a level 1, and then I had 2 kids at a level 2 and a kid at a level 3 and a kid that sort of didn't fit anywhere. And so I sort of just corralled them into kind of wads, okay? Now, when I sat down with the parents and the parents said, how's my kid doing? And I'm like, you know what? Your kid is precious and I love your child and he's so funny. He's a little behind, all right? And so I'd say, you know, they're really at a level A, and by the end of kindergarten, they really need to be at a 4. And the parents would say, okay, well, what do we need to do to fix it? And I'd say, just read to your child. Y'all do that? I did it all the time. Just read to them. They'll be fine. They'll catch up. They got time. Now, I thought about it the other day when I was talking to another group, and I said, truthfully, I asked the question, I'm going to ask y'all this question too. Y'all are educators, okay? If I want to move a kid from a level 2 to a level 3, what skills am I going to teach to do that? Anyone? Anyone? It depends on the publisher. Okay? Let me tell you, I'm real world. We had kindergarten expectation of getting our kids to a 4 or a 6 when Stacey Smith is my principal, because that's how she rolls. And I knew the easiest books were Rigby. So I pulled my Rigby book, and that's the one I would test. And my kids got the 4. I could get my kids to a 4. Because with a level 4, it's a very predictable text. It has heavy picture clues, a lot of sight words. I could get my kids to a 4. Now, they might have squeaked by the skin of their teeth. And then in kindergarten, or in summer, they wouldn't have any instruction. They come back in first grade, and those first grade teachers would come cuss me and say, they're at a 2. No, they were at a 4. I promise they were at a 4. Y'all do that? Have y'all had this conversation? So look, this is what R.I.S.E is suggesting. R.I.S.E is suggesting that we no longer group our kids based on a guided reading level. What we're suggesting is that we give very specific phonemic awareness assessments and phonics assessments, and we group them by their deficit area. 2 weeks ago, maybe it was last week, I had an email from a teacher that said, 2nd grade kid can read wonders, 2nd, 3rd grade level, can't spell worth a flip. Can you tell me what to do? I went out there, I gave the assessment. They scored at a 1st grade level in phonemic awareness and said, here's what you fill in those holes. So my suggestion is, you got 12 or 13 over here. They don't all have the same needs. And you're not going to know that need if you test them by level. You're going to know that need when you do a strong decoding assessment and a strong phonemic awareness assessment, and you fill those holes. They're going to be flexible groups, but they're going to be groups. Now, can I put these kids in the same group as those kids? Maybe. You got to test to know. Got to test to know. These kids can't decode and they can't comprehend, but probably the biggest majority of the reason they can't comprehend is they can't lift the words from the page. It's hard to comprehend what you can't read. This group represents a little bit different area because they can decode like champs, but they can't comprehend. So what am I going to do with this group? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to test and see how they are if I read the passage to them. Same with this group, same with that group. I want to know what their oral comprehension is. If these kids can decode and can't comprehend, I'm going to wonder, okay, first of all, I'm going to check their vocabulary. Are they ESL kids? Are they struggling with vocabulary? Then we'll talk to my speech therapist and say, hey, need you to do a little screener, see if we need to do some language things with them. This group, as more than likely, needs heavy phonemic awareness because phonological core deficit is probably their issue. But I don't know that for sure till I test them. So what we're suggesting with R.I.S.E is that we change what we do in small group pretty radically. So I've had people say, isn't this the same thing we used to do? I'm going to say that and say no, it's not. I've never seen anybody actually do that where you actually assess the kids. It's not a long assessment, and you group them based on that issue. And then you, like Stacey said this morning, you teach phonics and then you pull that thread all the way through the day. In writing workshop, reading workshop, small group, whole group, you pull that thread all day long. Because what we were doing in the past is we were teaching, I taught phonics 20 years ago. I taught it during this 20 minutes. Here's my phonics. When I went to small group, I pulled out a levelized text. And there wouldn't have been one suggestion of that phonics skill that I did earlier. So we didn't practice. My high kids did great, but my lowest third were like, what? You're teaching me one thing here and another thing here. And so what we're suggesting is let's make this make sense for our lowest third. And I've had people say before, what about our kids that can already read? Do they need phonics? Yes, because let me tell you what it will help. You have kids that come into kindergarten reading. I promise you do. I had them every year. But it will help their spelling tremendously. And you know what? There's a lot of cool rules that little nerdy kids love. My daughter's one of them. Okay, I love having y'all. Y'all just want to stay? Y'all are so fun. Thank you. Y'all can go sit. Thank you for coming up. All right. So we already know Louisa Moats calls the teaching of reading a settled science. Okay? Linguistics knows what to do to teach reading. Neuroscience knows what to do to teach reading. A lot of you are learning to do what to teach reading. But somehow our classrooms haven't gotten that message yet. We haven't given them to them yet. So what's happened? This comes from Mark Seidenberg's book that we just talked about, okay? If we know so much about reading, why are our literacy levels so low? And I think it's that disconnect. So our job is to make sure that from higher ed on, that we make sure that we're reading the research and we're getting our teachers the information they need. Now, where do you fall if you're an administrator? Where do you fall? Your job is to be instructional leader. I'm going to tell you the first book you need to read is Kilpatrick's Essentials book. Read that first. Somebody said, is it hard to read? No, it's not hard to read. Even though research is hard to read, it's really not. Read the first 40 pages and you'll come back to work and say, oh, we got to change. Have y'all experienced that? Have y'all read it? It hurts you. It's like, oh, but it's a really good place to start, all right? Look at that third bullet. I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher this is my 26th year. I'm a good teacher. I was a good teacher in the classroom. I did what I thought was best for kids. I think you guys are all in the same boat. I don't know anybody that does this profession that doesn't want to do best for kids, because we're not in it for the glory, and we're not in it for the money, right? Okay, we're in it because we love kids. Well, Mary Lou, you're laughing at me. Every day, that's right. Here's what we do, though. We think things, we think intuitively, they must do it this way, but we don't really read any research. And what's happened is our thoughts have been swayed by tradition. We've always done it this way, and by this is kind of how I think it works. When I was in college, I graduated from college in 1992. It was the pinnacle of the whole language world. And we were about reading to kids, and we were about immersion, and we were about if you read to them, they will learn. Y'all been there? And I loved whole language, and I embraced it, and I worked hard at it, okay? Loved my classroom. Back in the day, it was a Carson DeLosa classroom. Nobody knows what that is now. Now it's Pinterest. I had some word walls up. I had some stuff going on. Read to my kids all the time. Loved it. Read books with fervor. I would read Hickety Peg, and I would do all of those fun things, okay? And my high kids did great, and my low kids didn't. And they became lifers in remediation. They were always in intervention, from kindergarten to first to second. They finally went to middle school in intervention. And I tried everything I could think of to do, until I started reading the research where I had to throw away some things that I had assumed, okay? And that's hard. It's hard for me to do that. It's hard for you to do that. When you've been doing something for a long, long time, it's sometimes hard to remove yourself from that and realize that maybe we're not the experts at it. And it was hard for me to do, but I figured out how to do it. And I've had to eat some crow. I've had to talk to some teachers that would have said to me, wait, you taught me how to do guided reading. I know. Have y'all done that? Y'all been there? Yeah, some of y'all been in the same place I am. Here are the goals of RISE Academy. Now, the RISE initiative has 3 prongs. We're just talking about one prong, trying to increase teacher knowledge. That's the prong we're talking about today, okay? So the goals of our academy are on the board, okay? First, it's changing the culture of education to one not based on beliefs, but facts. Remember when Kilpatrick yesterday was talking about how intuitively we think that you learn words visually, and when you look at the research, not so? That was revolutionary for me when I first heard that. I was like, oh my gosh, we got to change what we're doing with flashcards. Okay, the second one, connecting the science of reading to classroom practice. There's a huge disconnect, There's a huge disconnect. We want to put those together. And the third one is creating a statewide professional learning community. I'm not standing up here because I know all the answers. I'm standing up here because Stacy told me to. Okay? I'm reading, I read every day, and I have a million books on my desk that I'm trying to read, and I want you to do the same. And when you discover something that I need to know or that needs to be in the R.I.S.E Academy, you need to email me and say, hey, I got this great classroom, come see it. Or send me a video of somebody doing something great. Because we want not only what works in Scranton, we want it to work in Little Rock and Rogers and Bentonville and all over the whole state. It's not about us. It's not about me. It's about the whole state of Arkansas coming together and creating this community of learners. Is that the awesome thing to do? I mean, 1,500 people converged on this city to come and learn about the science of reading. So I know we already have started that. We want that spark to keep growing. All right? Here's, on this slide, I made this slide because I didn't know Sam was going to make me send a PowerPoint. I made this slide in Google Docs. In the slides, you'll notice underlined blue links. There are 12 of them, and they are research articles linked to this. So if you're an administrator or a teacher and you just want to read more before your kids go through, before your teachers go through, they're kind of like your kids, send me an email. My email address is at the end, and I'll share it with you, and then you can just click it, and it'll come up. Okay, it's very cool. A lot of y'all just want to read some stuff, extra stuff that's not a whole book, and these are some pretty simple, easy, not too bad, not too hard to read articles. All right, here's what's different about R.I.S.E Academy. Here's what we're trying to do with R.I.S.E Academy is we're trying to be very common sense. What does it look like in the classroom? Okay, the research I try to read is important, but then I have to take that research and figure out, okay, what does it mean to me in my kindergarten classroom? And that's what R.I.S.E Academy is trying to do. Those of you that were here with me from the first year, we flew the plane as we were building the plane. It was a scary place to be. We've gotten much better over the last couple of years with y'all's help and your patience, okay? Most important, those bullets. That second bullet, third bullet, and fourth bullet, phonemic awareness and phonics, you're going to hear till you're sick of hearing them because we need that to come across loud and clear. You need to know what those are and how to teach them, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Okay, we're also going to talk about connected text and what it is. We're going to talk about how fluency is a little bit different. I'll do that right now because we don't have that built in. When I first started teaching, I would do, I came out of the classroom and I became an interventionist for a time. And one of my interventions were kids who couldn't read very fast. And so do you know what I did? I put them in a group, I tested them with a DRA, I put them in a group, and I pulled a passage. And we practiced reading that passage over and over and over. Have you done that? Repeated reading? You done that? Well, Kilpatrick says this. There's a lot of evidence that shows if I read the same passage over and over and over, I get better at that passage. But there's not much evidence to show that it transfers to any other passage. So if you want your kids to do a Shakespeare reading or something and you need practice, then that's a great practice. Keep doing that. But if you want them to actually get faster at reading anything, then you got to work on those sub-skills. And that's what our Day 4 in R.I.S.E Academy is all about. It's how to get better at those sub-skills. So that's a slightly different take to repeated readings. Once you're able to connect those letters and sounds quickly, then wide reading will make you faster, but not necessarily the same passage over and over and over. So that's different from what we've had before. There have been 3 sessions that I know of on sound wall versus word wall. Have y'all been to those? Anybody? I think Mary Berry has done. Actually, she may be doing one now, and then she did one yesterday, and then I think Mary Dahlgren was here. Here's what I did in my classroom. I had a gigantic word wall on my wall. Did y'all have that? You know that construction paper you buy at A+ Arkansas that's two sizes? It's huge. I hot glued it to the wall. And I would write high frequency words on there. And we would practice them. We'd do a little cheer, and we'd do y'all do all that? And on my O's, I noticed when I was looking at a word wall a couple weeks ago on a slideshow I had, that on the O's, there was the word on, and the word hour, and the word orange. Those are the only 3 I can think of. Now, when you think about all those sounds for O, and we got them slung up on the same board, and my 5-year-olds are saying, okay, if I want to spell old, how do I spell it? Well, you can't go to the ABC chart because it's O-O octopus. That didn't work. Orange, is that it? On, is it? You see where the problem is? And so when you move to a sound wall, it kind of talks about, you've got the sounds up, and then you've got each of the spellings that you've taught under it. And so that's the cool thing about that. That's going to be in Day 2 and Day 3 in your training. High-frequency words. How many of y'all sat through the high-frequency words yesterday with Linda Farrell? That's using intelligent, decodable practices to teach high-frequency words. I did them like this. Did y'all do that? I taught WHAT, okay, with a flashcard, and I would flash them. What? And then the next words would be, the first word in the book would be what? And they'd go, It's what? What? And they might make the transfer finally, okay? We even did this. We did everything I could think of. They kind of got it. I felt good about it. And then I taught WHO. It was out the door, okay? So what Kilpatrick talks about doing with high-frequency words is making them make sense, realizing that a lot of the high-frequency words are decodable, and let's focus on those, okay? And then the ones that aren't decodable, let's put the ones together that have the same issues. If the S says Z, teach all the ones that the S says Z, okay? If you're doing could, do, should, and would, group those together. And I think that is a lot more common sense. Also, before kindergarten, and I know this is hard to believe, but before kindergarten, I have heard the stories. I would never have done something like this. I've heard the stories that we want to give our kids a leg up on leveled text, so we send home the top 100 high-frequency words at pre-registration when they're in pre-K. Okay, we've all done stupid things. I mean, I've done them over and over and over. If the book says don't do it or it's not effective, I've done it. Okay, after 26 years, we've done it all. So we're learning, and that's the cool thing, is that you're learning and you just say, Lord, forgive me for screwing up some kids, and you try to do the best you can, okay? I'm just being real. All right. We've kind of talked about that first part, and that's nothing new. This is the research that we actually use. All of these books are on my desk at my office, okay? Because we've read these books over and over and over and over. In R.I.S.E Academy, the one that you'll get is the letters at the top right, and you're also going to get the bottom left. That's new this year. Equipped for Reading Success, that's Kilpatrick's book, and it has the past in it. It has some good practice. It's a really, really good book. If I were starting, that looks overwhelming. If I were starting, I would start with the top left. Get that one first, okay? That speech to print is Louisa Moats. Get the second edition. The first one's hard to read, okay? It also has a teacher workbook that you can work through some of those things. If you don't know phonics very well, you can kind of get through that, okay? This is what we used to put the academy together. That last bottom right, people always say that's Proust, but it's actually Proust, as in some kind of sea creature. Okay, have you heard science of reading, and have you said, what the heck is science of reading? This is what we mean by that. Basically, how does the brain learn to read? The cool thing about living in 2018 is that we have functional MRIs. Do you know what that is? It's basically an MRI where you do stuff. And so they don't put a book in there with them because, I think that would be problematic for the MRI. But there's a little strip that allows the kids to read. And they can measure the pieces of the brain, the parts of the brain that fire. And so they know so much about reading, a whole lot more than they knew back in the 70s. But a lot of this research is from the 70s. So they had it going on even in the 70s. But we know more now. Now we can say for sure this part of the brain is what's affected. All right? We also talk about the permanent brain, the way that kids permanently store words. If you have a kid that goes dog on every page, y'all ever had that? Sound out every word. That word's not permanently stored, okay? Once they are able to map that, what Kilpatrick talked about yesterday, once they're able to map that and it becomes permanent, you will never not be able to read that word unless you have a stroke. Then I'm not sure what happens, okay? I don't really know, but if I see the word dog, I don't have to go, I read it before I even have paid attention to it, okay? You can't not read a word, you know. What works for prevention of risk and what works for intervention. If you know right now, if I can tell you the magic bullet, if I can tell you 3 things that will make intervention work and make your kids not need intervention. Hi, Caitlin. Is that you? Are you Caitlin? No, you're not. I'm sorry. You look like a kid I had in kindergarten. Sorry. You're not old enough. These lights are killing me. Sorry, Sam. If I could tell you 3 things that you could do for your kids that would help you prevent reading problems and fix the other reading problems, would you do it? You would? 2 people would. Would you do it? If I could tell you how to prevent 50 to 75% of reading difficulties in children, would you do it? That's amazing. Y'all need to come to R.I.S.E Academy. I'll tell you what they are in a minute. Okay, these are 4 theoretical models, and we're only going to talk about one. And I need 11 of my best friends to come up here. Come on, 11. Don't y'all love sitting up front? Doesn't matter where you stand. I got 2, 9 more friends to go. More friends are coming. Thank you, friends. Thank you, friends. Who else? It doesn't matter what order you're in because we're going to build this, all right? This is something that really should not be controversial. It seems really common sense to me. The commissioner's my best friend. He's coming to join us. Hey, well, you know what we're going to give him? The equal sign. Come on up. All right. This should not be controversial, but it kind of is. It's really interesting to read the research. All right. This is the simple view of reading. Okay, it's called simple because it's just a simple little math problem, even though I'm not math. It's simple, but it's not simplistic, okay? So this is what K2 R.I.S.E Academy is built on, the simple view, all right? On the left side, we have this beautiful green with terrible handwriting. Thank you to Stacy's mom for bringing me some construction paper because the commissioner fell through on my construction paper. Decoding is on the left side. What's decoding? It's actually pulling the print off the page. It's being able to read that word, okay? So decoding, and then will you step out and stand right here, decoding? Come on over. You can be front and center. Okay, then we need a times. Come on, Mary Lou. Times. So decoding times something. What do you think the something is? Look at the choices. I'll help you. Language comprehension. Okay? So decoding times language comprehension equals, what does it equal? Reading comprehension. Well, who's got that one? Come on up, reading comprehension. Okay, will you stand up behind him and hold that up big? Now that's the simple view. That's pretty simple, isn't it? Basically it says, I can read the words and I know what the words mean. That really seems simple, doesn't it? Pretty simple. Here's the deal. Decoding has other pieces. And they're color-coded by green, so it's going to make it easy for you. So y'all go around to that side. For decoding to happen, your brain has to have 2 pieces in place. Phonemic awareness, and that's the awareness of sounds, individual sounds, being able to manipulate those. And, where's my other one? Come on up. And phonics. Now, phonemic awareness, Kilpatrick said yesterday, 80% of college professors didn't know the difference between phonemic awareness and phonics. I don't want y'all to leave with that. I want you to leave knowing. Okay, phonemic awareness is sound, no print. It's just sound. Do it in the dark. Which I hate that saying. It seems kind of... Okay, phonics is once you add letters to phonics, once you add letters to the sounds, now you got phonics. So if you're doing something and you're actually looking at letters, it's no longer phonemic awareness. Okay, you've switched. Okay, so you need those 2 components. They fall under decoding. Okay, times language comprehension, we have to have, where are my yellows? Come on over, yellows. Yellows, come on around. Why don't y'all sit on the stage? Can you do that without falling off? If I hold your hand?
Please.
Oh, y'all, I'll help you up. That's the worst part. Down's not bad. Okay, the 2 pieces of language comprehension are going to be vocabulary, so they got to know what the words mean, and listening comprehension. If your kids don't understand what you read to them, they're never going to understand what they try to read themselves. Okay? This is a cap. You are not going to read higher than you can listen and understand. Okay? So we've got decoding times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. That's the simple view of reading. Okay? I've had somebody ask me before, you know, I don't know if I buy that. What's not to buy? You've got to lift the words, know what the words mean to be able to read. That's real sensible to me. I like this because it's real sensible. But you know what? That's not the only model we have. We have 3 more, and they all say the same thing. You got to be able to lift the words from the page, but that's not all. And so some people get the false impression that R.I.S.E is only about phonemic awareness and phonics. And we've got a whole day on vocabulary. We have a whole day on reading comprehension. Now, there's a piece missing. What's missing? Fluency. All right, fluency is on white. And if I had some tape, which Suzanne was here, and I should have stolen her tape, I would have put half green, half yellow, because fluency is really part of decoding and language comprehension. You have to be able to lift the words pretty quickly. If you're reading everything like this, you're never going to understand it. Okay, so you have to be pretty fast and fluent at getting the words off the page, but you also have to be fluent in this language comprehension piece. You can't be wondering what that word means. You can't be thinking about the first paragraph when you're on the second paragraph. So that fluency kind of has issues. It kind of goes both directions. Make sense? Thank you, my friends. Thank you for being my friends. You can just put that right there on the floor. Okay, so that's a simple view, and that's what the whole R.I.S.E Academy is based on. And if we have kids that struggle, I'm sorry, thank you, Commissioner. If we have kids that struggle, when we test them, we look at that simple view, and we look at that left side, and we say, is decoding a problem? If so, we fix that first. Why do we fix that first? Because you don't know if comprehension's a problem or decoding. Once they can decode, then we look at that right side, and then we try to figure, is it a vocabulary issue? Is it a language issue? What's going on, okay? Decoding is actually easier to fix than some of the language issues, okay? It's pretty straightforward. So these are the 4 models we use. That top left one is the 4-part processor. We've taught that for years and years in Arkansas, but we've taught it backwards, okay? When you look at brain scans, the first 2 processors that fire are the bottom 2. We've been teaching the meaning, the context. That's last. You got to be able to read the words before you know the context. Okay, so we've been teaching it, but we've been teaching it backwards. So when we look at functional MRIs, those bottom 2 processors fire first. Then it pumps up to content or context, then it moves up, or it moves up to meaning, then it moves up to context. That bottom right is Scarborough's rope. It's got 2 strands, a top strand and a bottom strand. The bottom strand is decoding, so it was this side. That top strand's language comprehension, so it's this side of simple view. It's a little more specific in the language comprehension side, so you get more into that. And then that last one, that top right one, those are Linnea Aries phases of reading or word recognition, and I'm going to show you how we use that in a minute. We use that to decide what kind of text your kids need. Do they need decodable text? Do they need leveled text? Do they need trade books? Do they need big books? And that's what we use to make that determination. Okay? Everybody understand those 4 really, really fast? Okay, this is the piece I was talking about, that there is a natural place in your brain that speaking happens. I have 3 grandchildren. Well, I have 2 grandchildren and 1 in utero. So 1 will come in July. And let me tell you, you don't have to teach them to speak. They speak, and then they don't stop speaking. The cool thing about a grandma, because I'm a grandma, is that they come to my house, they eat anything they want. They can do anything, like they paint on my table. I would never let my kids paint on my table. But the fun thing is getting to read with them, get to do cool stuff with them. If you come to R.I.S.E training, you get to meet Jade because she's in one of the videos, okay? So spoken language is natural. Unless somebody has something wrong physically with them, they're going to learn to speak. This is how I taught my kids to speak. Sarah would say, bye-bye, and I would say, yes, bottle, okay? And so when I was in college, I thought that's how you taught reading. You just said yes. And you fixed it. I did. Okay? Now, I'm not telling you I was the smartest kid in college, but I'm just telling you this. I just thought intuitively it seems like it's the same skill. I'm teaching them to speak. I should be able to just immerse them in it and read to them a lot, and they're just going to get it. Now, they did learn to memorize some books. They learned to memorize Hecate Peg or parts of it, because I read it a lot. But they really couldn't handle it on their own. And so when you think about it, this is the side, left side. There's a path. Your eyes see print, and that goes back here, okay? So that's like the orthographic processor. And then up here, this is the phonological processor. And phonics makes that connection, that pathway. And if we don't do phonics, that connection doesn't happen to our lowest kids. Okay, Patrick said yesterday, your high kids can do that, but your bottom third doesn't do that. Every school I've ever been in the last year, I've asked this question. If what you're doing is working for your lowest third, please keep doing it. Rock on. But if your lowest third is struggling, we have to make adjustments. We can't have 70% of our kids up here in remediation. Okay, we got to fix our tier 1. And so this, interestingly, that second bullet says some children learn to read with minimal instruction, but unlike learning to talk, it is a mistake to assume that they will. And that's what we kind of do. We kind of make the mistake. I have a kid who learned to read on her own. I was teaching kindergarten and she was a toddler. I wasn't teaching her to read. I was just surviving. Okay? She taught herself to read. She played with magnetic letters and she just very verbal. Kid number 2, I actually had to work with. Okay? I can't make that assumption just because one kid comes in and can learn to read by my magical ways that every other kid's going to do that. Okay? So I have to make it accessible to every single kid. And how much easier when they're little than when they're big. I read a study this morning. Hang on, let me find it because I want to say it right. I was telling Stacy. I'm sure she's thrilled that I was telling it to her at 6 in the morning. Here's what I read. 90% of children with reading difficulties will achieve grade level in reading if they receive help in first grade. How many kids? 90% if they receive help in first grade. Let me tell you the second part of that. 75% of children whose help is delayed to age 9 or later will continue to struggle throughout their school career. Now, when I said to those parents, oh, just read to them, they'll catch up. Not so. It's not socioeconomic, and it's not really even IQ. It's what we're doing in that classroom. And so we have to be so be paying attention to those kids, and we have to so understand the science that no matter who walks through our door, we're like, it's on. I'm teaching them to read. Okay? That's got to be our goal. And I've heard some teachers say before, well, they're on track to special ed. It doesn't matter. It's still our job to teach them. Okay? And so that's kind of how we have to get to. Now, this next part, this kind of hurt me. Because I used to tell and I think it's important to read to your kids. I'm not telling you don't read to your kids. I'm just saying that's not going to magically fix them. Okay? Look at that last bullet. Reading to children does not guarantee that they will learn to read. It's a great thing because it's great for their oral language. It's great to help them with understanding how books work. It's great to have that conversation. I love it when Jade climbs in my lap and we read books together. That's awesome. But I also recognize that she still has to know that B says B. Okay? So you got to do more than that, and we've got to suggest more of that to our parents. And here's the cool thing about grouping our kids like we just talked about. If I test my kids and I know that they're having trouble with beginning sounds, then I can practice and I can send something home for practice for my parents. They want to help. And we give something very practical and something very easy for them to do, they will help. And so what a great way to build a community in our classrooms and our schools. Okay? All right, let's keep going. How is R.I.S.E Academy going to change a classroom? I hope this is true in the Academy schools that have already been through. I'm anticipating this is going to happen over the next 5 years. We're going to see huge changes in our classroom instruction. First of all, diagnostic assessment. That assessment piece is so critical. Okay. Secondly, small groups that are based on needs, not levels. Third, every single day, systematic and explicit phonemic awareness and phonics instruction. Pulling that thread, building the sound wall. Okay, here's the piece straight from Kilpatrick. I told you if you knew what it worked. I asked you if you knew what works, would you do it? How many of y'all said yes? Okay, you just raised your hand, so that means you're going to do this when you get back. All right. Here's what Kilpatrick did. He went and checked all the intervention studies that were out there that he could find. Okay, this is stolen straight from him. He's my friend. We had lunch together yesterday. 80 to 90% of the interventions he looked at had 0 to 9 standard score point gains. Let's talk about what standard score points are, okay? If you're in the special ed world, you recognize this. What is average IQ? Usually they say it's 100 or they say it's 80 to 115, okay? If I make one standard deviation, that's 15 standard score points higher. Okay, so if let's say that my IQ is 80 and you did something, which is not really possible, but you did something to increase my IQ by 15 standard score points, you'd be like, okay, think about you in the testing world. If I could look at word reading and I could make that go up by 15 to 25 standard score points, would you say that was successful? Yes, okay. Of the studies he did, 80 to 90% had a 0 to 9 standard score point gain. 10% of them had a 12.5 to 25 standard score point gain. And the interesting thing at the bottom of that slide, it talks about On the red, they went back and checked, and after 1 year, that growth was already gone. It didn't sustain. And on the green side, that growth sustained for 4 straight years. It kept going up. Okay? That's pretty powerful. Now let's talk about what they did. He divided them into 3 groups. Let's look at the green first, because don't you want to know the good thing first? The good thing first. Every single study that had good growth like that, from 12.5 to 25 standard score points, had 3 things in common. One was they trained phonemic awareness to the manipulation level. What did I say? Phonemic awareness to the manipulation level. Okay, that's important. The second thing they had was explicit, systematic phonics. Not sort of as it comes up, but with a scope and sequence, very explicit. Third was they had opportunity to practice in connected text. Not meaning-based text, not levelized text, decodable text. Those are the 3 things they had in common. If you want more details, it's in the Essentials book, okay? Now, the second group, the group in the yellow, from 6 to 9 standard score points, they were all missing at least one element. Either they didn't have phonemic awareness, or they didn't have that's the lowest one. The middle one, they did phonemic awareness, they did phonics, they did phonemic awareness, but they only did phonemic awareness to the basic level. They did blending and segmenting. So manipulation made a huge difference. That very lowest group, that red group, 0 to 5, they left out one major component. Either they didn't have phonemic awareness, or they didn't have phonics, or they didn't have that connected text practice, depending on the skill. Okay? So, if you know what works, which are these 3 things, explicit systematic phonics, practice with connected text, and aggressively addressing and fixing the phonemic awareness problems to the advanced level, we can get our kids out of permanent intervention. Actually, I think it would work to keep them out of that from ever even getting into intervention. That's what he says, prevention of risks, okay? So those are the 3 things that you need to have. So we need to actually talk about what that is now, right? Wouldn't that be important to know what those things are? So let's kind of go through that. This is the part where Kilpatrick says if we train every student K1, every student K1. How many kids? Every student K1 in phonemic awareness will reduce our reading problems by 50 to 75%. And he also says any program that does it systematically will work. Think about your program. Think about your school. When I taught, we used Saxon phonics years and years and years ago. And the phonemic awareness that I was doing was rhyming and alliteration. That's not even phonemic, it's phonological. Okay? Many phonics programs are decent phonics programs, but hardly any have a good phonemic awareness program. You've got to have a systematic, good phonemic awareness program that does more than, I'm going to read 4 words and you tell me what sound you hear at the beginning. It's got to get farther than that. Okay, it's got to be systematic. If you want to know a good one, come see me afterwards. All right, let's talk about phonemic awareness. I need 6 good friends to come up again. Or bad friends. Enemies are okay. 6 people. 6 people that are not superstitious. If y'all are in the back and you want to move, if y'all don't sit well like me, are you superstitious? Will you open that, please? Okay, I need y'all to arrange yourselves in order from tallest to shortest. It doesn't matter what the umbrella person height is. Arrange yourself in order from tallest to shortest. I should have one more person. You're you're sort of behind her.
Going this way or going that?
Tallest here, shortest there. You hold that, you're my sign holder, okay? I want you to think about this. Y'all come this way so that you're in a line. Go ahead and everybody come on this side of the umbrella so it's not confusing. Come ahead and come on this side.
Okay.
Okay, phonological awareness can be confusing, okay? Because everybody kind of slings it around and says phonemic awareness and phonological awareness and phonics, and it's confusing. So I want to show you with an umbrella. Okay, I want you to pretend that this label is on top of this umbrella and that the umbrella covers the whole stage, okay? Because all of these things are going to fall under it, okay? So even though they're not under it because I don't have that big of an umbrella, I want you to all pay attention to this. This is how it's going to work, okay? So we're going to go from tallest, really biggest, but I didn't want to say biggest because that seems kind of rude. From the biggest word part to the smallest part. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to hold that. I want you to hold that. I want you to hold that. All right, so we start under phonological awareness umbrella. We start with word awareness. That's, if you teach kindergarten, that's like a one-to-one correspondence without any print. Okay? So it's, if I want to say Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, I want to know how many words is that. Okay? Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Not difficult as long as the words are one syllable. Gets a little harder when you get multiple syllable words for 5-year-olds. Okay? That's what word awareness is. It's the difference between words in a sentence. Okay? That's the biggest piece of phonological awareness. That's really a preschool skill. But if they don't have it in kindergarten, you have to teach it. Then you go to syllable awareness. Syllable awareness is taking a word and breaking it into parts. So how many syllables are in the word cowboy? 2. When you teach syllable awareness, you always start with compound words, and then you go to non-compound words, because compound words are easy to split. Sailboat is easier to split than pizza. Okay? So you always start with compound words, and you move to non-compound words. So from word awareness to syllable, it's getting a little smaller. And then onset rhyme. Onset rhyme is like, if I say cat, what's the onset? It's the first sound till you get to the vowel. It could be a single sound, could be a blend, could be a digraph. Whatever comes before the vowel, okay? And then after the vowel and after is the rhyme. So in cat, you've got k, at. K is the onset, at's the rhyme, okay? So you see how we're getting a little smaller? We start with the whole word, and then we can break that whole word into syllables, and then we can break that syllable into types, into pieces, and then we get a little bit smaller, and we actually get to the smallest unit of sound, and that's the phoneme. This is the power. You are the power. This is the power skill. And at the beginning in kindergarten, you're doing blending and segmenting. But you know what? You're doing blending and segmenting here. You're doing manipulation even here. If I say sailboat, say sailboat. Say sailboat without the boat. That's manipulation at the syllable level. Well, Kilpatrick says we have to get to, and it's not going to happen until probably first grade, maybe second grade, is we have to be able to do that with individual phonemes. So say cat, instead of k, say s. That's manipulation. The cool thing too, if you use the past, which is what we do in the training, is that it has a timing mechanism built in. So if I say that, I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to say cat. Now, don't say anything. When I change k to s, and y'all go, sat! Okay, they got it, but they didn't get it fast, so they don't know it. Sort of like when I was teaching letter ID, I would say, what's this letter? And they'd go through the ABC chart. Letter, L. You have kids do that? They don't know their letters. They also don't know how to do phonemic awareness unless it's fast. That automaticity piece is important. So all of this is phonological awareness, but when I'm talking about phonemic awareness, it's just this baby part under that big umbrella. That make sense? So, and this is all absent of print. It's all just sound. It's being able to manipulate sound. And the reason that that's so important is that you're not going to teach all your kids every word they need to know. So if I know bat, guess what other words I know if I can manipulate the sounds? Sat, cat, fat. I can know all kinds of sounds if I can manipulate the middle sound, and I know bat. What other words can I know? Butt, bit, bet. Okay? So that manipulation helps kids teach themselves new words. Kilpatrick also says it's imperative that kids are able to do this if they're going to orthographically map. If they're going to map those sounds to the print, they have to be able to manipulate those sounds. Really, really, really important. And if you have kids in second grade, like the kids I've tested last week, they could read. They phonetically could read. But they had these holes that we had to fill in, or they were going to always have trouble with that. They were always going to have phonological awareness issues. So we want to fill those in. Thank you, friends. Very good, thank you. Nice job. All right, I hope that's clear on phonemic awareness. I don't want to spend a ton of time on that, but that's a really critical piece for the training. All right, and these are the tasks. Underneath phonemic awareness, you've got lots of tasks. On the board, you see identity, isolation, blending, and segmenting. That's where we usually stop. Why do we need to know how to blend phonemes? Why? What skill does that help with? Decoding. Actually be able to read a word. You got to be able to blend them, put them together. Okay, why do we need segmenting? What skill does that help with? Encoding, that's spelling. That's your spelling piece, okay? And then addition, deletion, and substitution, those are your manipulation skills. Those are the ones that you have to be able to do. Now let me caution you about something. We have had some people who have been very excited about our training, and they've taken this to heart, and they're like, okay, we're going to teach phoneme manipulation in kindergarten. And there's some kids that are ready for that, but developmentally, they probably aren't, okay? You really need to be manipulating syllables, maybe onset rhyme, but phonemes, that's a pretty hard skill for kindergarten. That really probably needs to go to first grade. So be careful, watch your scope and sequence. Your state standards will help you with that. One thing I didn't talk about, did you notice rhyme, R-H-Y-M-E? Did you notice that? Did you notice alliteration? Those are the only things I did when I was teaching kindergarten for phonological awareness. Those are subsets of onset rhyme. Think about it for a minute. What is alliteration? What are you looking at? First sound, okay? So that's the onset piece. What's rhyme? It's that ending. What makes a word R-H-Y-M-E is the R-I-M-E. And it's not the spelling, it has nothing to do with it, it's the sound, okay? So bed and head rhyme, but they don't look like at all, okay? So it's being able to, so that's, they fit in there, but they're not considered one of the big categories, okay? All right, I want to just show you just a really quick 30-second video of what explicit phonemic awareness might look like. What I want you to see is this is a teacher in kindergarten, and she's identifying the middle sound by doing a roller coaster. So she has the beginning sound, middle sound, end sound. Okay, so that's what she's doing. It's just a 30-second video. I just want you to see what it looks like in a real classroom.
Red, say it. Red. Red. I'm listening for that vowel in the middle at the top of the roller coaster. Ready? R, D. Red. Good listeners. Last word. Last word. Listen to this word. Tuck. Say it.
Tuck.
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 Ready? Tuck. Oh, I went over the roller coaster again. Great job, guys. You got those. Very good job.
Okay, that's what it would sound like. It's active, it's fast, it's explicit, a lot of times there's movement involved, okay? That's typical. They're not looking at anything. It's all oral, okay? That's what an explicit systematic phonemic awareness might look like. Okay. Next part is phonics instruction. I'm going to give you example, non-example, okay? When I was teaching, I would pull my kids back to the table with a book, okay, maybe a level 2 book. And we would do a picture walk, pretty extensive picture walk. I would kind of read the first page maybe, kind of get them going. I would flip through and I would find the words that they might struggle with. Like if there was a dog that said woof or something, I would say, okay, what do you think a sound the dog might make? You've all done that? You know, it's like, well, you know, my dog says woof. So, you know, kind of give them a hint about what's going to be. And then I would let my kids read, and I would make notes. And I would come back the next day, or maybe at the end of the lesson, depending on how many errors I had, and I would do a little quick phonics lesson, a little, you know, how it came up. And that's a perfectly good idea as long as I'm doing explicit systematic phonics in my core, but I wasn't at that time. So the only phonics they were getting was as it came up. So what happens if I don't pull a book that has a Q in it, or a CK, or a Z, or a TH? So what I was producing was basically a kid that had lots of holes, because maybe I hadn't chosen a book that had everything in it. And so the point of having, when it says systematic phonics, that means there's a scope and sequence that goes from simple to more difficult, okay? Explicit means I'm very specific about what the sound it is and why does it make that sound. Okay? If I see the word, if I'm doing, and phonics has both a decoding side and an encoding side. So if I'm teaching the word pick, not in kindergarten because it's not a kindergarten skill, in first grade, I'm teaching them to decode it, but I also teach them to encode it. I'm also incorporating those spelling rules. Why do I need a CK at the end of pick? Well, it's a one-syllable word with a short vowel. So if it ends with a k, it's going to be a CK. That's a spelling rule, and it's reliable. So I teach it to my kids. And so systematic explicit starts easy, goes more difficult, and it does have holes in it. So every day I'm teaching phonics, every day I'm building on what I did yesterday, and I'm practicing it, and it makes sense for my lowest kids. So that's the cool thing about that. I'm not telling you in your small group you don't need to do some incidental phonics instruction, and that's fine, but that can't be your program because you're going to leave holes. I promise you will. There's just no way you're going to be able to pick the right books that you need to be in the right order that you need. And so do that systematic, explicit phonics, okay? This is kind of what I was doing in my classroom. I didn't necessarily have a predetermined sequence. I based my teaching on the text, not on a scope and sequence, but on the text, okay? I just threw this in here for fun. This is what a typical scope and sequence would look like. Look how it goes from simple to harder. You start with a few consonant sounds and one short vowel. And then you practice, 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 practice. Then you add a few more sounds and a few more spellings. And then you see how it gets harder? You introduce closed syllables. That's kindergarten. You mix them up. There's lots of practice. You introduce open syllables. That's also kindergarten. Then you introduce blends and how to blend. You introduce digraphs, introduce some simple endings. Now this is going from K to 2. This isn't all going to be 1 year, okay? This is just, do you see how it's getting a little bit harder and a little bit harder and it's building on itself? That's what systematic phonics does, okay? Your reading standards from Reading Foundations will help you know what to teach. In kindergarten, you are required to teach open and closed syllables. In first grade, you're required to teach all 6 syllable types. So you have closed, you have open. What's another syllable type? Are controlled, sneaky E, silent E, consonant vowel E, vowel teams, and consonant LE. Those are the 6 that Arkansas has. Some of you may have phonics first. They have 8 syllable types. They split vowel teams into diphthongs and digraphs. Arkansas keeps those together and they add schwa. That's okay. Just teach them. Okay? Teach what Arkansas standards have in them. Okay, what we teach in R.I.S.E, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but there's a 5-step decoding side and a 5-step encoding side. Okay, this is what systematic explicit phonics looks like. Look at decoding. You're going to always start with a review. You're going to introduce the new skill first by sound because reading is linguistic. Then you're going to do a visual discovery. You're going to practice reading words. You're going to teach irregular words for decoding. You're going to practice reading phrases and sentences. That's all on the decoding side, okay? Now, I had a phone call one day this week about the standards, and the teacher said to me, the decoding standards, if they can decode it, does that mean they have to encode it? The answer is no. The decoding comes first. The standards require that they decode simple high-frequency words, a few, but the standard does not require that they spell them. That's harder. It comes a little later, so they may not match exactly, okay? On the encoding side, it's the same pattern. You do review, you introduce the new skill auditorily, then visually. You practice writing words. This is where a dictation comes in. You teach irregular words for encoding, and then you practice writing phrases and sentences. This is day 3 of R.I.S.E, okay? So that's kind of what an explicit lesson would look like. If you're missing, we're not going to ask them in R.I.S.E to go back and rewrite all their phonics lessons. We're asking them to look at their phonics lessons and see if they include these pieces. And if not, a lot of them don't have a review piece. Add a review piece. Might be a 3-part drill. Those of you that know phonics first or IMSC training, might be a drill kind of thing. And we give them a lesson plan with lots of choices that they can choose from. Makes it pretty simple for them, okay? I'm going to show you a very poorly done video. It's not poorly done because of anybody besides the fact that we're doing it across the state. This is a classroom, maybe one of y'all. It's in Northwest Arkansas, and it's just a real simple. I just want to show you an active way that you might see a phonics lesson. Okay, this is connecting phonemic awareness to phonics. Let me tell you what's happening first because I'm not sure you'll understand it. They're sitting in a circle, and the teacher is saying words that have A in them. Now, her goal is to figure out is the A in the middle, at the beginning, the middle, or end. And then she's going to write it to show them the generalization that AI is in the middle of a syllable and AY is at the end of a syllable. That's the goal. And what they're doing is they're sitting in a circle and she says a word. Now if the word doesn't have an A, they say put. That's the the auditory. Then if the word has an A, they jump up. So it's going to be a little active, okay, but y'all can handle it. This is I don't know if they're kindergarten or first grade. It's on the next slide. Oh, good, thanks. It's terrible footage because it was done with an iPhone.
Rain.
Rain.
Very good. Hey, in the word rain, where did you hear that A sound?
In the middle.
In the middle.
It has to be AI.
So it has to be
Now she writes the whole word so they can see it.
Okay. The word is, I'm going to use some made-up words too. Okay.
So we got some nonsense words.
The word is plaid.
Oh,
That actually is a real word.
That one is. Okay. The
But it
word,
does have the A
hey
on it.
Gavin, I'm ready. The word is play.
Play!
Okay. Where did you hear the A sound?
A-Y.
So I'm going to spell it with
A-Y.
A-Y-A. Okay, the word is bat. Okay, the word
There's
is
always one.
cat. Oh, I thought I'd get you.
That was me in
The
kindergarten.
word is bait. Where did you hear the A sound?
In the
So
middle.
how would you spell it?
A-Y.
okay, you see what they were doing?
Rain.
Hang on. So that's the way that you might actually practice that. Make it kinesthetic, make it fun for the kids. But they're actually coming up with the generalization. I can tell them AI's in the middle, AY's in the end, but how much better for them to discover that on their own with the way you're doing your lesson. They're active, they're involved, they're having to discriminate what the sounds, okay? Really simple. So we're not asking you to do something that's difficult. We're just asking you to be thoughtful about what you're doing, okay? All right, now we're going to talk about text because this has been a big controversy this year. We've had lots of fun with this. Predictable versus decodable. Let's talk about what is the difference between predictable and decodable. I just took screenshots of these two texts. The one on the left, the one on the right. Which do you think is decodable? Left or right? Why do you think that? Because when you look at we go to school, what word might not be decodable for 5-year-olds? School, okay? So you can't really tell for sure because sometimes sometimes it'll fool you. Sometimes you'll open it, you'll think, oh, this is a great decodable text. It's all short vowels in the title, and then you open it and it says ambulance, and you're like, okay? So when you start thinking about, Rigby loves accidents, by the way. I don't know if Rigby's here or not, but they love accidents and fire engines and ambulances because they're in a lot of text, and as 5-year-olds, they struggle to actually decode those words. Okay, if I'm thinking about being systematic and explicit with my instruction, that means I'm going from the easiest to the more difficult to the more difficult. I need to know which type of text lends itself to that. The one on the left or the one on the right. So let's talk about predictable text. What do predictable texts have lots of? They have a lot of high-frequency words. That's why those high-frequency word lists go home. Because if I can teach my kids to look at the first letter, look at the picture clue, and read some high-frequency words, I can get them to read that text. Now, I'm going to say read because I'm not sure they can really decode. Because a lot of the text, what happens, you know how in a level A, B, C, probably at least ABC, you have to read the first page? Why is that? Why do you have to read the first page? You have to give them the pattern. Okay, because they can't decode it on their own, you have to give them the pattern. So a lot of times when you look at them, they're fun stories. They've got great pictures. Sometimes they have repetitive characters. And I'm not saying you can't use those for a read aloud or something, but a 5-year-old is going to be frustrated if you hand them that text and they can't read it. Or if you hand them that text and they can read it in spite of the words. If you cover the words and they can still read the text, it's not really helpful. It's not really practice. Okay? And we were in the office, we were hanging around with different books because that's who we are. And Stacy was in my office and she said, she pulled up a decodable text and she said, I really have to read this book to know what's going on. Okay, these are the typical prompts that we use when we use leveled text. Have you used any of these prompts before? Look at the picture, get your mouth ready, skip the word, that's my favorite one. Go back and reread. That's a quality prompt you can use, because you do want them to go back and reread. What's wrong with skip the word? Your low readers don't come back. I promise they don't. It's a good concept for me because I will go back, but I'm a good reader. A low reader is just going to skip it and say, no problem, skip it, move on. They have no idea what's going on in the story, okay? If you notice, and I'm saying this, I'm preaching to the choir because I've done this for a really long time. When I was teaching my kids, my goal was to get them to look at that first letter, and then if there was a picture to support it, to figure it out. That wasn't really a quality decoding strategy, because let me tell you who does that. Do you know who does that in real world? Poor readers, because they don't have any other strategy. A good reader looks at the text, looks at the letters. I promise I'm a good reader and I don't look at the picture first. Okay? Is the picture supportive of the meaning? Yes. I'm not saying cover up the picture. I'm saying your first, here's what my kids would do. They would look at the first letter, look at the picture, look at me. Those are their three strategies. Okay? They would try to figure it out based on the first letter, based on the picture, and then ask me, prompt. Okay? What I'm suggesting to you is that maybe that kind of text for our earliest readers is not that helpful. So let's keep looking. This is an example I got from a guy named John Kinney. I'm a big Twitter person. If you want to follow somebody on Twitter that's really good, the Reading League is a really good one. And that's Maria Murray's here today, and she was here yesterday. Kristen Munger is here today. David Kilpatrick, they're all part of the Reading League. This is one, he just made this text up because I want to show you what happens. This is one, he just made this text. We have fun at the park, okay? I want you to look at all the words that he made up. Here's how the story goes. We have fun at the park. We have fun at the beach. We have fun at the shops. He's from a different country. We have fun at Grand's house. We have fun at home. We always have lots of fun. What level does that seem like? If you were leveling it, what would you say? 2 or 3? It's very repetitive, probably more repetitive than a 4. Would you say that's a 2 or 3 probably? That's my guess too, my best guess, okay? I want you to look at the text structure. Look at how many syllable types you have on the left. You have open, you have CVC, CVC, VC. Look at all those syllable types. Look all the way down that left side, what we're asking kids to do. We have digraphs, SH, CH. We have an apostrophe S. We have the word always. Okay, I want you to look at the letter sound correspondences on the right that we're asking them to know. This is kindergarten. This is the kind of book that I always used. This is what guided reading tells us to use, are these kind of books. And look at what difficulty we're handing our lowest, most needy children. Now, I've heard people say before, you can't give those kids decodable text, they're just so boring. Well, I mean, I'm not going to argue that the very earliest decodable texts are pretty boring because they don't have a lot of letter sound correspondences to work with. If your only letters are A, M, and S, you're going to have Sam and M, and you're going to have a Dr. Seuss book, okay? But guess what? Your kids can read that book, and they don't have to guess, and you don't have to pre-read it, and you don't have to picture walk it, and you don't have to tell them to guess it. They can actually decode that text. And very, very rapidly, if you follow a scope and sequence, if you have a good decodable set, it moves very quickly to text that they want to read. Not only can they read it, but they want to read it, and there's comprehension involved in that, okay? So let's look at decodable text. They are controlled. Why do you control what's in a decodable text? So they can read it. I've taught A, M, S, N. I'm not going to put a bunch of words with U's in them. Okay? I'm going to have some limited high-frequency words. I am going to probably have like Pam likes to nap. Likes is going to be a word you teach as a high-frequency word because you're not going to teach long I in the 3rd week of school. Okay? That Pam likes to nap is an emergent reader 6 in that scale. That Pam likes to nap is from the set that we gave away today. What was that called? Flyleaf. Those are not the only good decodable books out there. There's tons of them. Okay, if you need some suggestions, come see me. The majority of the words in that book can be decoded based on the phonics you have taught. That's the goal. Okay? And the pictures are good checkpoints, but you can't look at the picture and figure out what the whole story is. It's not what it's designed to do. And look at these prompts. This is what I'm suggesting to you as a prompt. Look carefully at the word. Who said that yesterday? If they're looking at you, how are they decoding? I want them to actually look at the word, look carefully at the word. Look for letter clusters. So if you've taught blends, look for those. If you've got digraphs, teach those. Sound it out and then check it. Now that very bottom thing says, as you teach syllable types, teach a sequence. We do this in R.I.S.E. In day 3, we actually teach, these are the steps for reading a single syllable word. Step 1, look at the vowel. Always start with the vowel. Step 2, identify the syllable type. If it's closed, what's the vowel going to say? It says a short sound, okay? Read the vowel sound, read the word. Now, how specific and how explicit is that, and how much better is that than get your mouth ready for the first sound and take a guess? That's what we're trying to teach our kids to do. Now, do we want kids sounding out words in 10th grade? Of course we don't. We want them to move to the point where they can orthographically map those words and they have them in 1 to 4 exposures. But in kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade, they need the support of a good text that they can actually read. And that's what's different about R.I.S.E. Here's an example. This is just one that was on his same blog. This is a very simple one. Just look, do you notice that there are no digraphs? There are no blends. They're all short. They're words that kids can read. Now, it's probably a high-frequency word because they probably haven't taught the decoding of that. But the rest of those are decodable. Okay, just a sample. All right, this is part of day 3 also. What kind of text should I use? We use ARIES phases. Before you've taught all your letters and sounds, you're going to use big books that are predictable. Why? What do you teach at the very beginning of kindergarten? Concepts about print, left to right progression, spacing. When I say a word, it matches. Those kinds of things. You're teaching that before you've ever finished your letters and sounds. That's pre-alphabetic. Once you start teaching those letters and sounds, once they're in partial alphabetic, they have to be in decodable text. So in partial alphabetic and full alphabetic, that's when you're using decodable text. Once they reach that consolidated level, you can use a trade book, you can use a level book, you can whatever. So I've had lots of people say, well, wait a minute, I have millions of dollars in my library full of leveled text. What do I do with those? Use them for read aloud, okay? Or even better, let me do this. Analyze that text. Maybe you can use it. Here's an example of a level 10. These are all the 6-syllable types, plus words that are irregular, words that have multisyllables, and words that are derivative. This is a level 10, so it's about mid-first grade. You may have some kids that are ready for this, but I want you to look at how many irregular words there are, how many derivatives, and how many multisyllable words. I will tell you it's really powerful to sit down in your book room and get everybody around the table, everybody grab a different text, and everybody do this analysis, and then decide which group is this appropriate for. And know your kids, know your books, put those together. So I'm not saying throw away your level books, I'm saying use them in a smart way for kids that are ready for them. And I think you'll be shocked. We did this with the school in Rogers, and we sat down and we looked at it, and I had somebody say, well, no wonder my kids struggle with that book. Look at all those words. Look at what I'm asking them to do. So it's being really analytical. I'm going to back up because these are the questions that we're asking teachers to ask before they move out of decodables to leveled text. Can they do past at an automatic level, H, I, or J? And I'm not going to get into that much because you'll do that in the training, but those are levels on the past. Can they automatically and accurately decode single-syllable words using the syllable types in isolation? Can they decode 2- and 3-syllable words in isolation? Do they score above a first grade on reading assessments? Now, this might be a 4th grade kid, okay? Now, once you leave decodable text, let's say you teach a new skill and your kids struggle with it. You might roll back into decodable text and then roll back out. That make sense? Okay? I know this is a lot. Here's the thing. Here's the bottom line. The research is really clear. We can reach 90 to 95% of our kids. Are we reaching 90 to 95% of our kids? Even if we are reaching 70%, which would be an awesome feat for your school, that leaves 30% not reading. Is that okay if that's your grandkid or your child? It can't be okay for us to do that. We've got to do better. We've got to do different. Okay? Now, what can you do before R.I.S.E. Academy? What's the first thing that would help you? Read the research. Just because I say something I'm an IP on, I don't know. I'm not a researcher. Okay? Go back and read the research yourself. There's piles of it, and it started in the 70s. If you need titles, let me know. Okay? Read the research. Next, I want you to think about what's going on in your building. What's happening in your building right now? Talk to your instructional leaders. Talk to the boots on the ground people. Know what's going on in your classrooms. And then you need to find out where are your holes? Where are your issues? Are your problems because your teachers don't know how to do this? Is it because they don't have what they need to teach it? Or is it because they're not consistent, they're not doing their program with fidelity? Okay? All right. That's the end of mine. It's 11:30. I'm really early. Okay, stop. We won't leave. If you want to email me, I won't send you the PowerPoint. I'll send you you want the Google Doc because it has the links, and that's a great piece. Okay. The 3 through 6, I'm just talking about this whole thing has been about K2. K2 is a 6-day training. We're fixing to start round 2. 3-6 will roll out this summer. It's a little bit different. It's a 2-year academy. So year 1 is 3 days, 2 in the summer, 1 in the fall. Year 2 is 2 in the summer, 1 in the fall. So it's still 6 days, but it's across 2 years, okay? For the K2 people that have already been through, we have a plan for your people for year 2. If you want it, just come let us know and we'll get you the training that you need for that. I'm not going to drag my feet around here. Do I need to do something? Do we just ask questions? Stacy, you want to do anything else? I got it. Okay, if I'm here, it's 11:35. Walk really slowly to lunch. But I'm here. You got a question? Yes, ma'am. Are you talking about the trainers piece? Or are you talking about actually getting to go through it? We have, this next year, we will have 77, I think, trainers across the state. Your co-op is having it at least once, and some of them have 2 trainers. Some districts also have that training available. So what co-op are you with? What school? Are you dealing with charter? Do you come with charter? Okay. That's Elizabeth. She's here somewhere. I've seen her. And they're having it this summer, but I don't remember the dates. Okay? Okay. Anybody has questions, I'll be here. I'm sorry you got out early, or maybe I'm not.